In today's lesson, we're going to be learning about different types of angles that are formed by parallel lines cut by what is called a transversal. We'll be working with these types of diagrams for the next couple of days. It's really important to understand how the angles are formed and how they are related. So we're going to fill in the chart first with each definition and then the examples from the first diagram, and then you're going to do the back on your own. So for a transversal, that is a line that crosses two or more other lines. And if you're looking at the diagram at the bottom of your page, you can see that the line that crosses the two other lines is L because it crosses both line M and N. The second definition we have is alternate interior angles. So alternate interior angles are congruent angles inside parallel lines on opposite sides of a transversal. So some key words from that definition that can help you figure out what they are is inside, because interior means inside, and opposite sides of the transversal. So we're looking for angles that look like they're the same measure inside parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversals. So the examples from the first diagram, if you're looking at that carefully, we have inside the transversal 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we want the pairs that are congruent to each other. So if you look for two acute angles inside the parallel lines, those are the two alternate interior angles that are congruent. So angle 3 is acute, and that is equal to angle 6, which is also acute. 3 and 6 both being inside the parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversal. There's a second pair of alternate interior angles as well. Those are the obtuse angles that are inside the parallel lines, and that would be angle 4 and angle 5. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 6 because they're alternate interior angles, and angle 4 is congruent to angle 5 because they are also alternate interior angles. For our next definition, we have alternate exterior, very similar to the one we just did. Alternate exterior angles are congruent angles outside parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversal. Again, keywords in that definition that can be related back to the actual vocabulary term is outside and opposite. So alternate exterior is like saying outside and opposite. The examples from the diagram, if we look outside the parallel lines, for two acute angles, we see angle 2 and angle 7. So those are a pair of alternate exterior angles that are congruent. And for a two pair of obtuse angles, we have angle 1 and angle 8. So they are also congruent because they are alternate exterior angles. So we have a couple more definitions to go through. We take a look at the next one. We have corresponding angles. So again, corresponding angles are congruent angles. In corresponding positions. So think of the same position. That's not an I there, that's an S. Corresponding positions around different vertices. So corresponding means in the same position, but on a different point. So if you take a look at 1, 2, 3, and 4, those 4 angles have a corresponding angle on the bottom of the diagram, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1 is in the same position as 5, therefore those are corresponding and congruent. Angle 2 corresponds to angle 6 because they're in the same position. Angle 3 corresponds to angle 7 because they're in the same position, one up top, one on the bottom. And last, angle 4 corresponds to angle 8 because they are in the same position, one on the top, one on the bottom. So it's kind of like you're taking those first 4 at the top and dragging them down to the bottom to find which one matches. Last, we have vertical angles, which we've already studied. And vertical angles are congruent angles on opposite sides of a vertex. And from the diagram, again, there are 4 pairs of vertical angles. So you're looking for all the angles on opposite sides of the vertex that are exactly the same. So from the top, angle 1 would be congruent to angle 4 because they are vertical angles. Angle 2 would be congruent to angle 3 because of vertical angles. Then on the bottom, angle 5 is congruent to angle 8 because they're vertical angles. And angle 6 is congruent to angle 7 because they are vertical angles. So now we can use those definitions to help figure out and help define whether angles are congruent or not. Now remember, all of those pairs we just went over relate to congruent angles. If they're not congruent in this type of diagram, they're going to be supplementary because all of the lines form a straight line as well. So whenever you see a diagram like this one, the angles are either congruent or supplementary. There's no other option. So we are now going to take a look at this angle, these angles. I didn't do it here. Hold on. And from this diagram, we could think about, well, if one angle is a certain measure, how can we find all the other angles? So for example, if I said to you, angle 1 is 132 degrees, I could find all of the other angles. So ones that would be congruent to 132 would be 4 because it is vertical to it. Angle 1 corresponds to angle 5, so that's also 132. And angle 1 is alternate exterior with angle 8, so that is also 132 degrees. And then all the other angles that are not in green are going to be supplementary to 132. Remember, supplementary means they form a straight line or add up to 180. So we can do 180 minus 132, which gives us 48 degrees. So we know that angle 2 is 48 degrees because it's supplementary to angle 1. Then angle 3 is 48 degrees because it's vertical to angle 2. Angle 6 is 48 degrees because it's alternate interior with angle 3. And angle 7 is also 48 degrees because it's vertical to angle 6. So knowing what types of angles are given can help you describe why they are either congruent to each other or supplementary to each other. So you're going to go to the back and complete the table telling me what types of angles each fill into each category. So which angles from the diagram are alternate interior? Remember, there should be 2 pairs. Alternate exterior should also have 2 pairs. Vertical should have 4 pairs, and corresponding also 4 pairs. I'll be around to help you out.